There we go. And today is our philosophy in motion class. So I wanted to go back to something. You maybe have heard this story earlier in our Zoom relationship if you've been with us right from March. But go back to a story that kind of explains a little bit about the sacredness of being in our human body. Welcome, Robin. If you want to start in constructed rest this morning, that's where I thought we'd begin. So we've been focusing this week as we lead up to Canadian Thanksgiving on different aspects of gratitude. And we can, as human beings, really take for granted the sacredness of our being. We can be focused on, the neck discomfort or some negative aspects of whatever's going on in our world right now. But really, the opportunity to incarnate and to live this life as a human being is really a sacred gift. And so I'd like to share with you a little story from the ancient texts of yoga that kind of explain a little bit one version of why it's so important and so wonderful to be able to come into this body. So this comes from an old book that was written, we're not sure exactly when, but it was interpreted by the Theosophical Society, which was very popular in Victorian times. And it's 2 full volumes, and it's all about metaphysical kind of things. It's called The Secret Doctrine. So it's written in kind of a stanza or verse kind of form, and the stanzas begin with an amazing dialogue between the earth and the sun, in which the earth is complaining that she cannot get enough spiritual energy for her advancement. Modern science has taught us, of course, that the earth is way out on a spiral arm of the galaxy, so we know that our home is very far away from the center of the galaxy, which is ablaze with fusions of stars and an abundance of light. But when these stanzas were written thousands of years ago, there were no scientific records to explain what the location of the earth was, nor the amount of light it receives. So records of ancient complaints of the earth understood in this context is really quite remarkable. And as you have had a chance now to settle into constructive rest, I'll ask you to bring more awareness to your breath over the next little part of the story. If you could maybe think about breathing in and out through your nose, and maybe start to inhale a little bit more deeply, exhale a little bit more thoroughly, moving gradually into a full yogic breath in over time, not right away. So starting to deepen and broaden your breath now. So the physicality of light is only one of the qualities of light. We know from the nimbus of the saints and pictorial renderings, and from the halo of Christ and the Buddha, and from the light surrounding the carriers of the Ark of the Covenant, as well as from other spiritual sources, that light has spiritual qualities as well as physical ones. In fact, accumulations of spiritual light seem to go hand in hand with spiritual evolution. So it's not surprising that the Secret Doctrine focuses on the spiritual dimension of the earth's complaints. Hearing the woes of the earth, the sun, or the great shining one, agrees to carry the complaints of the earth to the higher realms. And in the midst of this conversation that takes place over thousands of years, the stanzas report that the earth rolls over on her side before continuing the conversation. When the author of this book I'm reading read that, he thought, well, there's a clear reference to a pole shift if he's ever seen one. Let's gently draw one knee in towards the chest. Hold on to the leg, however makes sense. Wiggle the toes. Roll the ankle joint in both directions. And bend and straighten this knee a couple times. Let this foot come back to the floor. And repeat with the other leg. So draw that leg in, wiggle the toes, roll the ankles around in both directions, and bend and straighten your knee a couple times. Good. And then the foot can come to the floor. So we take these stories in our philosophy of motion class, and we try to interpret what we're learning in these stories and bring it into our own somatic or body felt experience. So let's take both feet up off the floor now. Take your hands to your knees. And then start to circle your knees around gently. So you can separate the knees if that's more comfortable, or you could keep the knees together, whatever works. Getting back to our story now, the earth was not patient. Taking matters into her own responsibility, she began to create beings on her own. And in this story, it's dinosaurs that were the result. Powerful forces in both the physical and spiritual realms did not view the experiment favorably. Boom, an asteroid or comet hit the earth, and the giant creatures disappeared in a flash. If you have just been doing circles in one direction with your knees, could you reverse directions now so that you have an equal experience? Meanwhile, in the higher realms, a spiritual council determined that the earth should indeed get help for her evolutionary progress. A highly evolved race of spiritual beings was asked to help. They declined, saying that although the goal was a noble one, giving this kind of aid was not their job or province. So the author of the stanzas declared that we know these beings today mythically as the angels who refused God. Let's gently drop the feet to the floor. Take a moment to embody, which means just to notice you have a body, to bring your mind into your body. And through today's story, I hope we'll figure out how sacred that process is of embodiment. When you're ready, can you please roll over and come to all fours? Remember, for my friends who don't care to weight bear on the knees or need greater support, a chair helps you find table pose quite a bit more easily. Another race of spiritually advanced beings volunteered to help, lending their light to the creation of a race of beings that would help the earth evolve. Now that you've come to your table pose, let's move into our cat-cow type movement. Inhaling, extending the spine, exhaling, rounding out the back. Keep it soft. Their plan was that this race of beings, human beings, would act as a step-down transformer. They would receive energy of the highest and finest sort in a receptacle capable of holding sublime consciousness at the crown of their structure. They would then step down the energy through successive centers until the base of the organism was reached. This energy would be in a form that the earth could now use in her own evolution. As you move through your cat-cow, become very aware of the spine. In yoga philosophy, we've come to see the spine as the real power center for this conversion of energy from heaven to earth. So you're warming up the spine very gently here, really liberating each receptacle, each vertebrae from its neighbor. Let's just do 2 more breaths here, using that full deep breath you were practicing when you were laying on your back. And then let's come to mountain pose. Let's come to stand on your mat. And so taking a very conscious standing position this morning, finding your mountain pose. So feet are a little distance apart. The ankles, knees, and hip joints in one vertical line. And then allowing your arms to be heavy at your side, so the weight of your shoulders releases. And align your head so it's centered right on top of the spine. And you can start to see why this is so important, adopting a nice vertical alignment with your spine where there's not a lot of tension, there's more ease, because you are the step down transformer. So in your mountain pose, just breathing and absorbing this information. The major chakras in the human subtle body are ruled by the basic elements, both physical and non-physical. Starting from the brow center, your elements that rule are mind, the throat is space, the heart is air, the belly is fire, the lower belly is water, and the tailbone area is earth. So you can see how philosophically we've stepped down the energy from unknown, spatial, ethereal energy from the celestial realms to actual space and air and fire and water and earth. So coming into a body. So can you take a couple breaths with that idea in your mind that you're coming into your body and that you are this conduit for this spiritual energy between earth and heaven. Let's come into some half moon stretches. So if you can lift your arms up above your head and be comfortable with that, that's fine. Otherwise, hands on the hips is fine with this. Inhale, be really tall, and then exhale, lateral bend to one side, and move back and forth slowly. Again, we're working on spinal mobility here, so nice and soft. According to these ancient texts, the finest spiritual energy comes into the crown chakra and is stepped down, chakra to chakra, until it reaches our base, which is ruled by the earth principle. Here, that energy that started in our crown is now in a form that the earth can use for her own evolutionary progress. Nowhere is the innate nobility that humans feel about themselves referred to in the initial stages of creation. Our importance was only highlighted by the function for which we were designed. When you've gone an equal number of times to each side, come back to center as you inhale. Exhale, return to mountain pose. If you take the hands together at your heart in a prayerful sort of gesture, maybe you can see the heart as that spiritual balance point in your own body, the midpoint at which the energy is shifting from spiritual to material or from material to spiritual. The energy needs to move in both directions in order for us to be a true transformer. And then if you'd like to come to the front of your mat, we're going to come into a lunge variation. My friends who would prefer to use a chair for lunge, just have the seat of the chair in front of you. So while you're getting set up, I'm going to demonstrate the posture, then come back to my job of reading. So I'm going to just demonstrate with the chair for now. You can be on the ground with your knee down, and I'll get you down there in a minute. You don't have to go there yet. But the twisting lunge will be something like this. It'll be moving the arm back and up and around. But we're really moving the shoulder blade. So even if your arm didn't move, you could be still getting the same movement by moving the shoulder blade. So from mountain pose, let's bring the hands together at the heart again. Trying to get that sense of sacredness to your work this morning. I don't know about you, but I have a habit of really judging my physical body and not being happy with it a lot. So thinking about my embodiment in this way of being intensely grateful is very healing for me. And then when you're ready, inhale, let's embrace life. Lift your arms up, breathe deeply. And then exhale, soften and fold forward into your forward fold. Really honor the earth, bring the energy to the earth. Inhale, come halfway up, extending the spine really long, heart first. And then exhale, hands to the ground or your chair and step your right leg back into lunge. And you're choosing the version of lunge that seems to make the most sense to you based on whether you can weight bear on the knee or not. So then we're going to work a little bit with the left arm. As you inhale, lift the left arm if you can. And as you exhale, take the left arm back behind you and twist towards the left knee. So you're coming, and then keep moving with your breath. So it's a big circle for the left shoulder blade, really. Interestingly, though, some very old spiritual concepts are reflected in quite a different way than we are used to thinking about them. Man created in the image of God. Yes, that certainly can be applied in a cosmic sense, as above, so below. And yes, this can be true, but in a way quite apart from our usual manner of thinking about it. Let's do one more breath, moving the left shoulder. And then we can either find mountain pose if you'd like to come back to that, or you can take a quick down dog. If you're using a chair, know that you can modify this by hands on a chair. Take a few deep breaths, the kind of breath that you were establishing when you were lying on your back. And then let's bring the hands together at the heart. So coming back to mountain pose, the front of your mat, embodying your spirituality. And then inhale, sweep the arms up to heaven. Exhale, soften towards the earth. Inhale, come halfway up, show your strength. And exhale, drop the left leg back into your lunge. And this time will be the right arm that makes the movement. So as you inhale, lift the right arm. Exhale, pull the shoulder blade back and twist towards your right knee. Moving a few breaths like that. Fortunately, the consideration of us as, from the initial description, humanity has no real importance of its own. We were designed essentially as a tool for the earth, a step-down transformer. It's nothing more than a tool, something one uses when necessary, then discards or lays down when not in use. Let's go one more breath. And then we can come back into the down dog if you used that before, or just step right back into mountain pose if you don't want the down dog detour. Take one more breath. And then please turn sideways on your mat. We're going to start to talk about the true spiritual empowerment of humans now. So I'm going to just clear my mat off so I don't have any obstructions. So up until now, our story has revealed that really we're just a step-down transformer. But now we're about to really come into our full power in the story. So let's use warrior pose. I'm going to take this leg, turn the thigh bone out so that the toes are facing the short edge of the mat, and then bend the knee so the knee is directly over the ankle. This leg might need a little bit of adjustment, forward, internal rotation, if you feel that your low back or your hips or your knees aren't completely happy in the original alignment. And then when you're ready, we can inhale and take our warrior two shape. And I'm going to talk for a few minutes, getting back to our story. If holding warrior two becomes tiresome, release the posture and then come back in when you're ready again. It's important that we stay pretty relaxed in our practice this morning so we can feel our energy. We don't start blocking our energy. So nice deep breaths in warrior two. So fortunately, consideration of us as a species does not end there. The stanzas go on to explain that the original council decided as part of our construction that we would be naturally sentient or self-aware. Now, sentience is different from intelligence. A plant demonstrates a certain kind of intelligence as it grows naturally toward the sun. One can call it instinct, but viewed in a broad context, instinct is merely one kind of intelligence. Animals also demonstrate intelligence, the dog chasing a thrown stick, a cat rubbing against our leg, or fish with noses pointed towards the top of the aquarium. All of these activities involve intelligence of a kind, but sentience is different. Let's release warrior two on this side. Turn your feet parallel and take a moment to reflect for you the sentience of your being. What does that mean to you? It means you're different than dogs or plants or fish in some way. Let's go to the other side with our warrior two position. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. And no need to lean too far forward over the front knee. Make sure your spine is centered and vertical up and down from the ground as best as you can. So sentience means self-awareness. Sentience means an understanding of oneself as a being in the universe. Sentience means thought and reflection. That long ago, faraway council described by these stanzas realized that it had created a race of sentient beings for a specific purpose and then essentially discarded them. This was not right. No standard of ethics or morality can justify the discard of a sentient race. So it was further decided that this race of beings would be given an opportunity to become that for which it was the vehicle, if it should so choose. Let's release Warrior 2, and please come back to your parallel feet. We're going to come into a posture now, balancing half moon. So you may want to have that chair. I'll demonstrate this with my chair. And if you're familiar with the posture and you would rather use a block or no prop at all, that's always an option. But the chair tends to make this very, quite a bit more accessible for a lot of us. So we're in this wide-legged position. And you could be using the back of the chair or the seat of the chair, depending on how far you want to go into this. I'm going to take this leg, rotate it out, just like we had it in Warrior 2 with the knee bent. I'm going to leave this arm down, though, this time. This arm doesn't have anything to do yet. I'm going to start practicing lifting myself off onto this foot. So kind of getting the idea of how to lift off onto that front foot. And then I'm going to drop my hand onto the chair for a little bit of help with balance and practice lifting this leg straight up. So my body is facing square to the camera, I hope. I've got this lifted foot flexed, and the gaze could be down at the floor if I need a little bit of help with balance today, or I can look straight ahead or up. And eventually you might want to lift your arm and just kind of complete the shape. And if you need to, you can turn the chair around if you need even higher balance. And you could always just balance a shoulder on that chair so that you could find this without weight bearing on this bottom hand if that wasn't a really good option for you. So play around with that pose without a prop. This is what the pose looks like. But it's a lot more work to get all the way, your hand all the way to the floor. A chair or a counter can help quite a bit there. And then when you've had a little bit of time on this side, let's come back to mountain pose. Think about that energy. It's moving through your body. I've had personal experiences, and I think we all have in our yoga practice, of personal experiences of feeling energy move. And so now we're starting to get a new perspective on what that energy is doing and why it's there in your body. And then if you're using the chair, it makes sense to turn around, face the other direction, do a 180, take your legs apart, and then come into the pose on this side. So now the humble purpose for which we were created was turned upside down. If we started by receiving the very finest of energy from the highest place in the spiritual as well as physical planes of the universe, then we could also be that, become that, and evolve to that. It's a whole different ballgame. Journeying from the humble to the sublime was now part of our birthright if we chose to do so. Try to find a smooth breath wherever you've landed in this half moon pose. And then let's come back to mountain pose. Take a breath in and out. And then when you're ready, let's take the hands to the heart. Inhale, lift the arms up towards the heavens. And exhale, come into forward fold. Bend your knees so that your body rests on your thighs. That supports your low back. And to the degree that you can comfortably, allow your head to hang heavy. And think about this reversal. Instead of just being a step down transformer, taking energy from heaven and bringing it to earth, your birthright is to take earthly energy and take it back up to heaven. So it's a two-way stream. It's a sacred job. And when we do our inversions like this pose in yoga, we're really exploring the idea of taking our mission upside down. And then when you're ready, let's bring our hands to the ground and fold to our bellies. So coming down to the ground and lying on your belly in a prone position. You're welcome to bring your hands under your forehead so you can still breathe. Taking some of those nice deep breaths that you were practicing right at the very beginning. And then would you be able to take your arms back alongside your body, palms facing in towards the sides of your hips? Let's build this posture from the earth up. So press down through the fronts of your feet, the fronts of your hips. Gather your shoulder blades into the spine and widen your collarbones. Keep a long space in your low back. Don't let it pinch. And when you're ready, inhale, float your chest up from the floor, pull your arms up behind you towards the sky. And let's exhale, lower back down. And we'll do that dynamically a few times. Inhale, float up. Exhale, move back down. And then you have the option now of holding that pose. So the tops of the feet are pressing into the ground, the hips are pressing into the ground, but the upper body is floating up away from the ground. Extending the spine, lengthening the spine, while the bottom of your body is pressing into the earth. See if you can keep the breath flowing, keep the energy moving, as it's really kind of your sacred duty, isn't it? To keep this energy flowing through the spine. Do you have one or two more breaths here? And then feel free to release. And let's just right from here, roll over onto your back. So you don't have to shift your body to the other way on your mat. Just roll right over onto your back. Bend your knees, stand your feet on the floor. Just let your back rest for a minute. Take a breath or two here. And then let's do another movement to really extend and lengthen the spine. In physical terms, we call this axial extension. But in spiritual terms, we talk about this opening up space for that important exchange of energy through all of the chakras. So on the inhales, can you take your feet up and your arms back? And on your exhales, can you hug the knees into the chest? The head and shoulders stay on the ground the whole time. And we're really focusing on the movement through the back here. So notice when you lift your limbs, there's a lengthening of the spine. And as you exhale, there's a slight kind of grounding to the spine. So just really focusing not so much on the arms and legs, even though they're getting the big ticket items, but focusing more on the spine between the tailbone and the crown of the head. Wonderful. Now, before we leave this position, I just want to demonstrate an alternative for if you don't care for the full version of pigeon pose, where we're going next. So what you would do is you would take one foot across the opposite thigh and work at the hip opening from this angle. So if you have knee issues or you just don't care to move into such a posture as pigeon, this would be your alternative. For the rest of us, we can roll over to our side, come back to all fours. So remember, if this position doesn't work for you, you have the alternative on your back. And then let's do a few movements with one leg. I'm going to start with my right leg. Inhale, extend. Exhale, knee in. And this can be done from your back too. Same sort of movement as you kind of touched on at the beginning of class. And then the next time you have your knee brought as close in to your body as possible, point it out to the side and bring the lower leg to the ground. Make sure you flex the right foot, the right ankle. Walk your left leg back until we have found a pigeon pose. Now, you may notice that you need a little bit of support here underneath the right sitting bone. If you feel like your hips are really off to one side, it would be lovely to tuck a blanket, a towel, a pillow underneath there. We're actually not coming into the folded forward version of pigeon that's often done. We're thinking about staying in this position today. And remember, if this is too much for your knee or your low back even, then come over onto your back and do the other version I demonstrated earlier. So see if you can find a nice, deep, full breath here. We want to have some ease, if we can, through the whole spine. This means a nice long arc, no kinks in the spine. Taking a couple nice deep breaths. If you are in the full kind of, this isn't full pigeon pose, I'm doing a modification, but if you're in the full expression of this posture here, make sure both hips are evenly falling to the floor, not just one side. So remember, sentience involves self-reflection, it involves self-knowledge. So it's really our job as human beings to do this kind of work, to think in these kind of terms. Let's just take a couple more nice deep breaths in our pigeon pose, whether you're doing the reclining version or the upright version like this. And then for those of us who are on the back, just release back to constructed rest where we began class. For those of us who are in pigeon pose here, we can come into a downward facing dog. Gives you a chance to shake out that right leg, or you could come into a child's pose if that suits you better. Whatever symmetrical position we've chosen, let's take a couple nice deep breaths. And then we can move into the posture on the other side. So if you're doing the posture on the ground, we'll take the left leg, inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale. And after about three breaths to really get that hip joint lubricated, we can bring the knee forward, take it out to the side, flex the left ankle, and come into pigeon on the other side. So you may find that one side you are quite comfortable doing it this way, but on the other side you need the reclining version. Vice versa, doesn't matter. You're getting the same hip opening, and you can work on the same spinal lengthening in either orientation. Draw awareness to your breath. And take a moment to contemplate the spirituality of the moment, of the sacredness of this moment, of being in your body that has a unique place in this whole thing. Your experiences, your physical capabilities, all of these things coming together in this moment to step down the energy that you are uniquely qualified to step down and to lift up. Just take a couple more breaths. And then we could come back to downward facing dog, shaking out that left leg, or child's pose is an option. Or if you're on your back, take constructed rest. And then you might want to pull out your blanket if you haven't been using it yet. And I have about a 1 to 2 inch height of blanket fold here. I'm going to come to sit on that, stretch my legs out so that my sitting bones are just hooked over the edge of the blanket. This again sets my spine up for a nice lengthening, which is quite important if I want to keep that spiritual energy moving in my body. We're kind of taking a whole new perspective on that today, but we often talk about that. So if you find forward folds difficult, have more height up underneath your hips. And the other option is also to bend the knees. That tends to take a little bit of pressure off the pelvis as well. So bending the knees is always an option. Our goal today is not to touch our toes or anything like that. Our goal today is to see how long we can keep the spine. So it's not a matter of folding forward. It's a matter of extending the spine in that direction out there. So let's see how that feels. Inhale, exhale, extend the spine forward. And then inhale, come to sit back up. And exhale, extend the spine forward. So you're hinging at the hips. Your back is staying in the same curvature as when you're upright or angled forward. It's a bit humbling, especially if you practice yoga every day and you think you're really flexible, to find out that your hip forward fold is not as deep as you planned on going. And after you feel you're lubricated a little bit, then we can stay in the extent of your movement. For me, it's not much more than 45 degrees here, if it's even that. Hands can be wherever they are. They don't have to reach your feet or anything like that. But we could let the chin relax towards the chest. I'm not rounding out my back. I'm not coming into cat back, but the chin could relax to the chest. Keep pushing back with your sitting bones and extending your breastbone forward. So you're continuing to lengthen the spine here. Breathe actively. Maybe take 2 more breaths, actively lengthening the spine. And then in order to support the back, I like to have the hands on the ground to lift myself back up. Wonderful. Let's work with camel pose. Let me show you something you can do with the chair if being on your knees is not comfortable. You can use a folded blanket. I've done this with a pool noodle. A block works if you have a foam block at home. But if you place the blanket right about here on the chair, and then you sit with the blanket aligned with your spine, you can find a very nice camel pose with no pressure on your knees whatsoever. So you can get that blanket or prop set up on the chair if that's the version you're going to do. For us, for others, we may decide that we can weight bear on the knees today. I do like a little bit of padding though. So let's come into the seated position or the kneeling position, whatever way we can feel most comfortable. Take a moment to elongate the spine. So whether you're seated in the chair or on your knees, we want to create that open conduit of energy. We're going to work on a version of camel pose today that really focuses on that lengthening. So taking the hands either to the sides of the chair or to your backside, whatever way you are is perfect. Widen the collarbones, draw the shoulder blades into the spine, and elongate up out of the crown of the head. So we found a really long open channel from the crown to the tailbone, from the tailbone to the crown. And then we can breathe a little bit with this. If you want to, you can inhale, lift one arm up, extend. Exhale, come back. Inhale, lift the other arm, and exhale, come back. So it's not about back bending, it's about extending and lengthening your spine as long as you can. Be as tall as you can. Really move into your sacred responsibility of being that conduit of energy. Let's do each arm one more time. And then relax into a comfortable seat, which might be seated in your chair. You can take your prop away. Or maybe we can just come to thunderbolt pose on our mats. Take a couple deep, full breaths. And then let's prepare to come back down to the ground. If you have a chair, you might find it interesting. Just make sure it won't move. I've got mine butted right up against the baseboard there. If you don't have a chair to use or the edge of your couch or something, maybe you can just have a pillow or a folded blanket to achieve the same effect. I'm going to come into kind of a hybrid between bridge pose and shoulder stand. And this is to kind of get that inversion sort of effect. When we flip our bodies upside down physically, we flip our spiritual focus as well. We start to really embody the idea. It becomes a physical expression of a mental concept. We embody the idea that we are this up and down, as below, so above, as below, right? So that we are an expression of the divine. We have an important role to play. So coming down onto the back, if you have a chair or the edge of the couch, something that won't move, you can place your feet on the edge of the chair. If you don't have something like that, leave your feet on the ground and you can just slide something underneath your sacrum in order to achieve the lift. With our gaze straight up at the ceiling and our spine in alignment, press your feet into the edge of the couch or the chair and lift your hips. Now, if you don't have the couch or chair, know that you can just put something underneath here, that pillow or whatever you have, and just lift your legs up towards the sky in a modification of shoulder stand. Walk the shoulder blades a little closer into the spine. Keep your gaze straight at the ceiling. Point your knees away from you and take a few deep breaths. So we've inverted our relationship between heaven and earth. We're flushing out the energy channels so that we're more open to receiving and to sending, to giving. Can we stay here for a couple more breaths? And then when it's ready to release, you can take the prop out from underneath you or if you're using the chair like me, just lower down. When the spine meets the ground, stop. Just let it rest. Let the energy settle naturally before you start pulling your knees into your chest or doing anything, kind of crazy. Just stop and let everything settle. I'm going to need to shift my weight back on my mat so I have some more room to move my legs. You might be fine. And after you've had a chance to let the spine settle, I'm going to invite you to take one knee in towards your chest. You can hold on to the back of the thigh if you like, and stretch the leg up towards the ceiling. So try to make the leg as straight as you can. Flex your foot. Really push energy out of the heel. And take a few deep breaths. In order to focus on elongating the spine still, think about the sitting bone of this lifted leg and push the sitting bone towards the end of your mat. So lengthen, lengthen, lengthen the sitting bone down towards the end of the mat. Not only will you get a deeper stretch in the back of your leg, but you'll also have the effect of creating more openness for that energy exchange. Try to keep your shoulders and your head on the floor in a relaxed way. Take a couple more deep breaths. And then notice if it might be possible to stretch the other leg out straight on the floor. So both legs are now straight. I'm not sure that that will work for you, but see if it's possible. Both ankles are flexed, both heels pushing away from you. So you're still lengthening the spine. Let's release this arm. This hand can still work with the opposite leg. And gently start to begin a rotation of this leg across your body. It's okay to roll over a little bit as long as the shoulder on the other side stays down. So both shoulders stay down on the ground. Guide this leg across your body until you feel, yeah, that's enough. And then just kind of create a shelf with this arm for this leg so that there's no strain to get this leg all the way to the ground. Keep pushing out of both heels. So this isn't a completely passive stretch. There's a lot of activity as you try to push down through your heels as though you were standing in mountain pose and trying to elongate your spine from there. So theoretically, you're still connected to the earth through your feet. Take a couple of nice deep breaths. And then soften this knee that's been up in the air for so long, draw it into your chest, and let's hang on to it for a little bit. So one leg's still straight out on the floor, and this knee is pulled into your chest. Now this becomes a passive stretch, so relax. Take a few deep breaths. And then let's come back into our constructed rest pose. Take a moment to inhabit your body, to be embodied. It is a sacred gift, a sacred dharma or responsibility to have this gift of a human body. Then when you're ready, let's take the other knee in towards the chest and straighten this leg up. Flex the ankle, push energy up to the ceiling out of your heel. And then this sitting bone elongates down towards the end of the mat. So we're still working on axial extension in our hamstring stretch. And then if you like, we can explore the idea of straightening out the other leg. So both legs are now straight, ankles flexed, heels pushing away from us. So it's quite an active position. We're not just hanging out here. I can feel lots of activity in my legs. Take a couple more breaths. And then release this arm. Keep the opposite arm touching the leg and guide the leg across your body just until you feel you've got enough stretch. Keep both shoulders on the ground and then support this leg that's moved across your body with your other arm. So you're not pulling on it, you're not forcing it to the ground. You're just coming into a place where you have a nice amount of sensation that captures your imagination. Both feet are still flexed. You're still reaching energy out of both heels as though you were trying to stand on the ground with your feet. So you're still extending the spine long. Take a couple more breaths. And then let this top leg soften, bend the knee into your chest. And now we can relax into this stretch for a few breaths. So ankles can relax, shoulders can relax, jaw can relax, face can relax, body can relax. And then from here, we can move into Shavasana if you're ready. There may be another movement your body needs before you can relax into the extended supine pose. Make sure you're warm enough. It's still quite cool this morning. And as you work to pad your body from underneath, filling in all the little gaps between your physical body and the earth, you can think about trying to create a cozier relationship so you can step down that energy and bring that energy back up from the earth more efficiently. So if you need to tuck something underneath the back of your neck, for example, even into your lumbar curve or under the backs of your knees, all of the places where you don't easily connect to the floor, you can use blankets or towels or pillows to make that connection to earth for a more efficient exchange of energy. So coming to Shavasana now. And thinking a little bit about the story we told today about the sacred job for which human beings were created. And as you have been exploring your physical body during all these movements, you have been participating in this dance of creation, of this dance of advancing the spiritual awareness of the earth. In Shavasana, we come to stillness, but the exchange continues. As we stay focused on our physical sensations and we stay present with our breath in Shavasana, we are continuing to work through this process of embodiment, of becoming a physical expression of a spiritual concept. So maybe today we embrace awareness of our feet with a love and appreciation The feet are what allow us to walk on the earth and to root into the earth. And we think about our legs as sacred tools of transportation. We think about our hips and buttocks, pelvis as sacred miracles of creation. And we think about our whole spine as containing that conduit, that sacred rod of energy. And it becomes a miracle, really. It becomes beautiful, no matter what shape it is. And we think about our arms and our hands and all the sacred work we do with them. And we think about our beautiful faces and how our unique face helps us express to the world how we're conducting that spiritual energy. As we smile at others, we let them know that we're working to build up that spiritual energy. When we see others in their facial expressions, maybe we can offer them that spiritual energy through our facial expression. And then as we feel our good friends, the brain, producing lots of thoughts up there today, we can be very grateful for this higher level of thought that we have capacity for. We can be very grateful that our brains are so active and so intelligent and so sentient. So see if you can expand a feeling of gratefulness, of gratitude, of sacredness to all of your body. All of our lumps and our bumps. They're perfect just the way they are for the job that we have to do here. If you have a little bit more time this morning to spend in your Shavasana, if you're finding these ideas intriguing, then please take all the time you can. But if it's time to move on with your day, you may decide to make a few deeper breaths now. Wiggle and jiggle your fingers. Roll over to your side. And gradually join me in a seated position. And that might mean using your chair. And one more time, we could take our hands together at the heart, where we might be feeling that connection a little bit more than we did at the beginning. And let's seal our work with Om. Om is thought to be the original vibrational energy that brought us into our physical being. So when we chant Om, we're kind of reorganizing back to our factory defaults. Inhaling now. Namaste. So thank you so much for practicing with me today. I'd love to hear how everyone's